People used to treat me like I was nothing, a mere silhouette against the backdrop of my own life. It was an early morning at the airport, the clouds still clinging to the horizon, and I was already weary. As a civil rights attorney, I was preparing to travel to DC for a deposition that could change the course of many lives. Yet I could feel that familiar anxiety creeping in. Yes, I knew the security experience all too well. As I approached the TSA checkpoint, Officer Callahan's eyes narrowed, his smirk a precursor to the scrutiny I would face. He selected me for additional screening, and the indignation bubbled. "This is just protocol," he said, but I felt the weight of history pressing down, the familiar stench of bias creeping in. When Callahan unearthed the silver cylinder holding my grandmother's ashes, disbelief washed over me. The bond I shared with her was sacred, yet here I was, defending my dignity against the absurdity of his claims. Fiberglass, I stood my ground. "This isn't suspicious," I shot back. As he fumbled through his accusations, the balance shifted when I handed my business card to his supervisor. I was no longer merely a victim. I was a civil rights attorney, and I would demand accountability. The air was thick with tension, but I could feel the tide turning. Once the ordeal was over, I documented everything. I was determined to seek more than just personal justice. Through FOIA records, I revealed Callahan's disturbing history of racial profiling, shining a light on systemic injustices that too often go unseen. His actions led to his termination. This wasn't merely revenge, but a call to action. I knew then, true justice begins when we refuse to remain silent. I was ready to challenge the status quo and inspire others to join the fight against injustice. "Ma'am, you've been selected for additional screening," Officer Callahan announced, his smirk barely concealed beneath his cap. The early morning air buzzed with an unsettling tension as Imani Carter, a civil rights attorney, stood in disbelief. "Selected? I'm just trying to catch a flight to DC for a deposition that impacts lives," she replied, her voice steady, but her heart racing. "Nothing personal, just procedure. You know how it goes," he shot back, his tone dripping with condescension. Imani tried to remain calm. Just a few more minutes and she'd be in the air. "I understand the protocols, but this feels unnecessary." He leaned closer, eyeing her bag. "Let's see what you've got in here, shall we?" As he rummaged through her belongings, he pulled out a silver cylinder. "What's this, some sort of contraband?" "Others' ashes," she retorted, heat rising in her chest. "It holds immense personal significance." Sure, he chuckled, the glint in his eyes suggesting he didn't believe her. She raised an eyebrow, voice rising slightly. "Do you genuinely think that I would carry something like that as a weapon?" Before he could respond, his supervisor Henderson arrived, the authority radiating from him. Imani seized the moment, handing over her business card. "I'm a civil rights attorney. I'd like to document this incident." The earlier smugness drained from Callahan's face. Turbulence. "Do I need to file a complaint? Because I will." With that, the power shifted. Imani felt her resolve solidify as she took control of her narrative. Later, she would uncover the truth about Callahan's track record. Nearly 80% of those profiled being people of color, a statistic that only fueled her march toward justice. This was more than personal. It was systemic. As she boarded her flight, a flicker of relief washed over her. This time, she wasn't just a passenger. She was a force for accountability. Imani stood in the dim glow of the airport terminal, exhaustion draping her like a heavy coat. The early morning ambience felt oppressive, echoing the weight of her mission as a civil rights attorney. Today, her fight wasn't just for her. It was for the countless families counting on her deposition to alter their lives. But as she shuffled through TSA, a familiar chill enveloped her, the nauseating anticipation of unnecessary scrutiny. "Ma'am, we need to conduct additional screening," Officer Callahan announced, and the smirk on his face ignited a spark of frustration within her. She had faced this before, yet the sensation of forced helplessness was a bitter pill. As he rifled through her bag, a clash of achingly personal memories flashed before her eyes. Her grandmother's ashes, the silver cylinder, a bond of love and loss. "What's this?" Callahan scoffed, examining the delicate urn with ill-concealed disdain. Imani held her breath, fighting back tears, her voice steady yet edged with indignation. "That's my grandmother," she asserted, each word laced with both sorrow and strength. The absurdity of his accusations, questioning the sanctity of her heirloom, threatened to boil over. The situation escalated as Imani deftly challenged every flawed assumption, standing firm against Callahan's biased theatrics. Just as her resolve peaked, his supervisor Henderson arrived, shifting the power dynamics like a rogue wave. Imani calmly handed him her business card, a silent acknowledgement of her stature, watching as Callahan's bravado crumbled. For the first time, a hint of uncertainty flickered in his eyes. "Do you know who I am?" she pressed, standing her ground. The fear that ignited in Callahan's face fueled her determination. She mentioned filing a complaint, and the weight of her voice carried a promise, the promise of accountability. As her belongings returned to her, a swell of relief flooded her chest, but she felt her purpose sharpen. In that vulnerable moment, she clicked her phone to record the encounter, capturing a resolve that felt electric. It was no longer just about her. It was about justice, and she wouldn't back down. This was the dawn of something powerful, an awakening she would carry far beyond the airport's gates. Imani stood firm, her heart racing but her voice steady. "Officer, I've had enough of this. You can either approach this professionally or we can go down a different path." Callahan smirked, his expression dismissive. But behind him, a glimmer of uncertainty flickered across Henderson's face. "Repeat that, ma'am?" "My mother's ashes aren't a security threat," she replied, holding his gaze and feeling the weight of the silver cylinder. "If you feel the need to prove your bias here, you're only exposing your own incompetence." Callahan's lips twitched, his bravado faltering, yet he snapped back instinctively. "It's standard procedure." "Is it, though?" Imani's words dripped with a calm assertiveness, like a blade cutting through the fog of his prejudice. "I'd like you to explain the procedure for screening personal items that have held familial remains, because I don't think you know what you're talking about." View Henderson stepped closer, his presence imposing but shifting. His eyes turned to her business card with hesitation. "You're a civil rights attorney?" "Correct, and I intend to file a complaint regarding this unjust screening and your officer's conduct. You'll be hearing from my office." With each word, her spine straightened. She felt empowered by the realization that she wasn't just fighting for herself. She was challenging a system. Payroll after retrieving her belongings, she began documenting everything on her phone. A careful record of the incident. A small triumph in a sea of systemic injustices. Ansed back, both men now looked on edge. "This isn't over," she whispered, a determined spark igniting within her. The fight wasn't just hers. It was for everyone who felt powerless. This was just the beginning. Imani stood still under the harsh fluorescent lights of the TSA screening area, her pulse quickening as Callahan smirked, deeming her silver cylinder suspicious. "What's in here, huh? Some sort of weapon?" he taunted, pulling it from her belongings as if it were a bomb. The granules of grief pulled tight in her chest at having her grandmother's ashes scrutinized like contraband. Each moment of his ridicule felt like a betrayal, chipping away at the resolve she had built over years of fighting for justice. As Callahan's laughter faded, a shadow approached. Supervisor Henderson, noticing the mounting tension, raised an eyebrow. Imani took a breath, her voice steady but powerful. "You might want to check your bias there, officer," she said, handing Henderson her business card. "I'm a civil rights attorney." Imani noted the shift. Callahan's smirk faded, replaced by uncertainty, as Henderson's face blanched. The air thickened as the balance of power teetered, Imani crafting her words with precision. "This isn't just an inconvenience, it's a violation," she stated, documenting everything on her phone, feeling the weight of accountability shifting in her favor. The room was wrapped in silence, an unusual stillness where chaos had just reigned. Later, as the truth of Callahan's history unfolded before her eyes in FOIA documents, evidence of a consistent pattern of racial profiling, she felt a swell of fierce satisfaction. Nearly 80% of those he'd targeted were people of color, a revelation that underscored the very systemic issues she had dedicated her life to challenging. Henderson's call came through the next day, delivering the news of Callahan's termination. Imani took a moment where the world outside continued its chaos, and in her quiet corner she reveled, not in revenge, but in justice served. Her grandmother's ashes, a symbol of her lineage, stayed tucked lovingly in her bag. Each triumph against prejudice felt like a promise kept, igniting a new fire within her spirit. She smiled faintly as she shared this justice with the world, feeling the echo of her grandmother's strength urging others to rise too. This was more than her victory. It was a call for all who had been silenced to reclaim their narratives. Justice wasn't just an act, it was a movement, a beginning. As I sit in the quiet of my hotel room before the deposition, the morning light spilling through the curtains, I reflect on that day at the airport. I was weary and focused, striving to make a difference for families who needed a voice. But facing Officer Callahan reminded me of a harsh reality. Bias still seeps through the cracks of our systems. The smirk on his face as he scrutinized my grandmother's ashes cut deeper than I would have liked to admit. I defended my right to dignity and respect, and in that moment I felt the shift in power as I revealed my identity as a civil rights attorney. Awakened something in me, a resolve to stand up against injustices that too often get brushed aside. I uncovered data that revealed a painful truth. Many have faced what I endured. Looking back, I ask myself, did I go too far in demanding accountability? What would you have done in my shoes? Have you ever faced a situation like this? I invite you to share your stories and reflections in the comments. Together, let's engage in an essential conversation about justice, bias, and our roles in creating change.